Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is CJ. Welcome back to episode 14 of my 120 gallon reef system. Now it's going to be all about pods and cleanup crew, guys. It's time for me to finally seed the tank and get this thing moving. Now before we get going too far, I do want to give a huge shout out to Algae Barn. Thank you for sending me this package of pods, cleanup crew, phytoplankton, and everything else I'm going to need to successfully seed this 120 gallon tank. Without you guys, I definitely wouldn't be able to do it, so I appreciate it. So what can you expect with the packaging? Honestly guys, I would say this is very well packed, insulated, also has cooling gel packs inside of it, and it looks like everything came in one piece. Now besides UPS leaving this on the porch in the late evening when no one's home, a couple of hours outside on a 70 something degree day wasn't the best, but it looks like everything arrived in one piece. Now as I kept digging through this box, honestly I didn't really know what to expect. I'll tell you, I was pleasantly surprised when I came across this humongous bag of copepods. Now this is a 5280 pack, which is a blend of 3 different types of pods, and there's over 22,000 of them in this bag, so that's going to go a long way to seeding this 120 gallon tank. And they also did the pleasure of including some cleanup crew members for me, which is 25 snails and 10 snails. So I love those snails. They do a great job and they're very active with eating algae. So add a little phytoplankton on top of that, and what you see is the perfect pack for seeding your tank. So for those of you all that were curious, here goes pods, guys, at least to the human eye. Just looks like specks in a bag, easily could get confused with detritus or dirt, but if you look closer, you'll see them actually moving. Now this is the best footage I can get on an iPhone. I wish I had some better camera, but it still gives you an idea of just how much life is teeming in this bag. Now if you take a look, there's different types of pods as well. There's one type that's actually darting around the bag, those are your trigger pods. And there's 2 other types, I'm not going to butcher their names, but they have different purposes. Some live inside the rockwork, some do both, live inside the rockwork until they breed, and then later in life they become available in the water column. So definitely is a nice, well-rounded bag of pods, different species that'll have different purposes that definitely will help my reef tank. So now the fun part begins, acclimating these pods, these snails, and adding them to my reef tank. Now some of you all may be wondering, why even do this? Why not just throw them right in? Well, there's a couple of reasons behind it. The first one is temperature acclimating the pods. Getting them used to the water's temperature will help wake up any that are sleeping and will help them adjust faster and hopefully live longer when I put them in the tank. Now when it comes to the cleanup crew, invertebrate snails, they're all very sensitive to changes in water chemistry and parameters, so I definitely did a slow acclimation drip. Usually, I do this for about an hour or 2 minimum to make sure these guys are really comfortable with my water's parameters, so that way when I add them, they don't kick the bucket as well. Now I will say this, Algae Barn does quarantine all of their inverts, so that means they put it through a quarantine process, they treat them to make sure they're safe and they're not bringing any unwanted parasites or pests into your tank. Now I do want to give you guys one quick tip. When you're adding your cleanup crew, make sure you put them right side up, because if you leave them belly side up, any rats in your tank will take that as an open invitation to destroy your new addition, so definitely keep that in mind. So snails are in, next up is the pods. But before I can do that, I had to make sure I removed all of the mechanical filtration from my sump. With the way my manifold's set up and the water recirculating, I could easily remove, half the pods day one without giving them a chance to populate and seed my pond matrix and my refugium, and just seed my algae scrubber and just seed the entire tank. So, removing the mechanical filtration was a major key. Now, besides no mechanical filtration, the next thing for me was to make sure that I killed all the pumps of the tank. No return pump, no jowers, 0 water movement. What that allowed was for me to squeeze this bag of pods and literally squirt them into each crevice and nook and cranny of this Vulcani rock. Basically every place that the fish usually can't get to, and hopefully let these guys establish themselves. Now for those that are curious, why did you add pods at night? What was the point? Here it is. Look at all these fish. Trust me, these guys are always on the prowl. They're always looking for their next meal. So if I was to drop pods in here in broad daylight, they would get destroyed immediately. No doubt about it. Maybe lose 2/3 of them instantly. So the plan was to make sure I let all the wrasses go to sleep, all the tanks go to sleep, usually around lights out, and that's the best time to add pods. So highly recommend everyone consider that before you just take a bag of pods, bring it home, and just dump it right in your tank. So after all the snails and pods have went in, I gave them a day or so to kind of get adjusted and get settled, and it's finally time to feed them. So for those wondering, what do pods eat? Besides the things in your tank to try it as algae in your rock and everything else, you can also feed them phytoplankton. Now, phytoplankton is basically a microscopic marine algae. Now, this is my first time using it, so I'm still learning the effects of it and how it's going to affect my system. But for the most part, it should be great as far as keeping my pod population intact and growing. And then later down the line, this may also be a benefit to my corals. Now, the recommended amount to dose for my tank is around 60 milliliters. I eyeballed it the first batch just to kind of give you guys an idea what it looks like. But I will be keeping more track of how much I'm dosing this to make sure I don't overdo it. Now, if anyone was wondering, are you done with your cleanup crew? I would say absolutely not. I just dropped in over 20,000 copepods, around 30 snails, but that was going on top of the 30 or so snails I already had in here, and the around 50 hermit crabs that I've accumulated at this time. I look at a cleanup crew as a constantly revolving door of, deaths and needing to be constantly replenished. So with that being said, I'm still going to be adding more snails, Nacira snails for my sand bed, sand-sifting starfish. I'll be adding more snails and hermits as needed as they get slowly picked off and destroyed by these wrasses in the tank. So definitely the circle of life continues in the reef tank, and it's never ending. So when is the best time to add pods and snails and hermits and, your whole cleanup crew to your system? You're going to get varying opinions on this. Some say drop in the entire cleanup crew at the end of your cycle, do it all at once, or it doesn't matter. For me, I look at my tank like this. There's different stages of life that this tank needs at different points. So if I could do it over again, I would definitely introduce copepods right at the end of my cycle, before I added fish, and giving those guys a head start to really have a population bloom or, really take over the tank before I had any potential predators in the system. But I would not have added my cleanup crew right away. I think the cleanup crew should be added in conjunction with your fish, in conjunction with the amount of food that they're going to have available. So, in the perfect world, I would say add copepods first, and then add snails and cleanup crew as you add fish, as the food in the tank dictates how much cleanup crew you're going to need. So what's my final thoughts on the algae barn? Honestly, guys, after seeing the package come in and how everything was vacuum sealed, everything was clean and organized, I can tell this is a company that takes pride in their product. They quarantine everything, and they make sure they even cover dead on arrival. So, with all those things being said, regardless of me getting this sent to me as a sponsored thing or not, I would not have a problem one bit with spending money with this company, as other YouTubers already have and had great success. So I think this is a pretty good stopping point for this episode. And for those that are curious, I have been very busy in the tank, adding fish, getting extra equipment, so tons of updates coming. So as always, hey, you guys can like, comment, subscribe. You guys keep doing what y'all do. Y'all be easy. Happy reefing.